for me, the Aussie yen is always a very, very complicated pair for me to look at. And because of um, its complication in my own perspective, I always want to look for significant confirmation to join whatever expectation I have on this pair. So I want us to look at this together critically and let's see how we can actually take advantage of any move that is coming up before us and going into the new week. Well, on the first thing we will observe going to the daily time frame is that we are on a bullish momentum. And because we are on a bullish momentum, it is more advisable to look for opportunities that support this perspective going into the new week. So the first thing I did personally was to identify a bullish trend line we can walk around with. So if I look at what happened since December last year, we have a trend line around here. So, and if we connect the series of lower highs at this point, we saw that we have a major trend line at this point. And one thing we want to be looking forward to is after this impulse leg, is probably price will probably come down into that bearish to that bullish trend line, after which we look for structures that support a trend continuation to the upside. The second perspective is this other trend line I identified here, which to me, I want to see it as a temporary trend line. As we can see, since September last year, price has been respecting that aspect of that trend line as we see price continue to find higher highs, though this one, this two pivot low looks more like what's it called, a false breakdown of that trend line. We saw the rejection of that trend line at this point, then we saw a breakout of the trend line, a retest of that trend line, and we saw that move to the upside. And with this trend line, prices back at that trend line as we saw sharp rejection of that trend line during the mid mid during the mid of May of this year. And since that rejection happened, we saw that this level at 91 Japanese yen has been rejected multiple times in the last 1 to 2 weeks thereabout, giving us a clue into the significance character of this level at 91 area in the last 1 month thereabout. So zooming into what has been happening lately, like I said, we want to see price do a retracement into this into either of this trend line before we look for that bullish momentum. However, we have a scenario here where price has done a sharp rejection of that trend line, and though we saw multiple rejection of 91 Japanese yen area in the last 1 week, and there is a possibility that this level could send price breaking that temporary trend line and probably reject it and come back down to move price up. So that is one perspective to look at. And the second perspective is if we see a breakout of the skill level at this point, a retest of the skill level which evolves into a pattern that supports a trend continuation will probably be a good area for us to take advantage of a trend continuation going into the new week. So now with this information at the back of our hand, how do we plan to take advantage of any move going forward? If you remember what I said earlier on in the video, I said it is pertinent that considering the ambiguous situation I used to find myself on the AUDJPY, I will definitely want to look for structures that support a bullish momentum considering long-term perspective on this pair. So with a key level identifier at 191, okay, allow me to label this please. Key level identified at 91 Japanese yen. So we have the key level right here. So if you allow me, let's give this a gold color. And then we have the key level right at 315. We have it at 91 area going into the new week. Then definitely we want to scale down to a much lower time frame to look for opportunities that will guide our action going forward. So one thing first I want to say is this: if price continue to oscillate below this level, definitely we might be looking forward to a breakdown of that trend line where price will probably come and retest this major bullish trend line, after which we might be looking for that bullish momentum going to the upside. However, if price continue to continue right above that key level, then we want to look for structures right above that key level to take advantage of the bullish momentum. So allow me to scale down to a much lower time frame, the 4 hours time frame, where we want to be looking out for structures that we could use as our guide going into the new week. So the first thing first we observed on the 4 hours time frame is that we do have a temporary bearish trend line. As you can see, if we look at what has been happening since on the 12th of this month, we saw that price has continued to find lower, as in higher lows, and this higher lows looks more like this. And I want us to, okay, we have something like this right now. We have higher lows since on the 12th of May. And one thing that will be our guide is this. If we have a breakdown of that bullish trend line, then we want to be looking for a retest and structures that supports a trend continuation to the downside. However, if we have a breakout of that key level, then we want to take advantage of any buy momentum. So, in addition to this bullish trend line we identified here on the 4 hours time frame, it is pertinent we also identify this bearish trend line as well, to as we cannot neglect what the structure of that bearish trend line is giving us. So with connecting the series of lower highs at this point, we have something that looks more like this. So definitely this will also be a parameter we can be using going into the new week, as if we see a breakout of that trend line, then definitely it gives us a sign that the trend line no longer holds the selling pressure anymore, as a retest of this area will signal a bullish momentum. So if we are going to buy the Aussie against the yen going into the new week, we want to be having our entry point right above the key level at around 91.278, where we would have a long position that looks more like this, with a stop loss right below the key level and below previous structure, with around 100 pips, and we want to have a take profit target of, let's say, if we look at the last impulse leg, we want to project it into the future. We have an impulse leg here, so we want to project this impulse leg into the future, and we having something like this. So for the sake of clarity, let us bring out our extension tool and run it through the previous impulse leg, and we aim at 127.2% of that impulse leg. Then we will be having something like this. We'll have price right around, let's use 98.5. We have 98.5 on a long term perspective. So with about 700 pips thereabout. Okay, this is what we have on a long term perspective on this one. So personally, this is what I'll be looking out for. As any selling opportunity, selling momentum for me will not fly for this week. As if any selling momentum happens this week, probably if we see price break down this bullish trend line, I am going to hold on for for price to probably come into this major trend line, after which I will look for structures that support a bullish momentum. So on this pair, it's a no-no for any selling buyers for me on this one. And why is that? I am considering the long-term perspective on this one, and that will be my yardstick going into the new week. So please note that regular updates will be shared in the comment section of my TradingView account for reference purposes, as price action is being monitored. And it is also pertinent I say here that during the early hours of the trading session, if I see structures that says otherwise, I will definitely do a follow-up video in that regard. So at this point, thank you very much for watching, and do have a wonderful weekend.